Hello, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to the ABS-CBN Dolphy Theater for ANC Presents the Clean Energy Shift, powering a green economy with renewable energy. I'm Rico Hizon.
And I'm Denise Densai. We're so glad to see a packed house full of stakeholders from government, business, academia, civil society, and we're all united by one critical topic: the future of Philippine energy.
Indeed, Denise, because the Philippines stands at a crucial crossroads. Climate change impacts are intensifying and the global market is rapidly shifting towards decarbonization. For our nation, this is more than an environmental imperative. It is a massive economic opportunity.
Now, our government has set ambitious targets: a 75% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and a significant increase in renewable energy share in the power mix, 35% by 2030 and 50% by 2040. But the challenge, as always, lies in the execution.
That's the bottom line, Denise. And this forum, the Clean Energy Shift, aims to move that conversation forward.
The energy transition of the Philippines is happening, slowly but surely. The country still relies heavily on fossil fuels, which account for the majority of electricity generation, with coal alone contributing well over half of power supply in recent years. The Philippines has the most coal-dependent grid in Southeast Asia. But it is on track for an annual decline in coal-fired electricity output for the first time in nearly 2 decades, thanks to rising liquefied natural gas power generation. Geothermal and hydropower are also long-standing strengths of the archipelago. Solar and wind are expanding rapidly. But scale, transmission, and regulatory hurdles remain to be the bottlenecks as the country races towards its 2030 and 2040 goals. Urgency is a must. The Philippines is among the world's most climate vulnerable nations, facing stronger storms, rising sea levels, and heavier floods that threaten lives and the very power infrastructure people and businesses depend on. That's why stakeholders of the green energy transition are making sure the shift happens with the whole community in mind. This forum starts with one clear message: meeting targets is not only about kilowatts, it's about securing the future of Filipinos.
And to set the stage, we now invite a global expert on the rapidly evolving energy landscape. She is a program director of the Asian Clean Energy Coalition, an organization founded by groups including the Climate Group, the Global Wind Energy Council, and the World Resources Institute, aimed at accelerating clean energy policy and market reforms.
Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ms. Suji Kang.
Joining Ms. Kang on stage are 3 highly respected leaders from government, international policy, and the Philippine private sector.
First, she leads the global RE100 policy team, mobilizing the corporate membership's collective demand side voice to drive policy change, enabling procurement of renewables in the most challenging markets. Please welcome Ms. Hannah Broman, Senior Policy Manager for Energy System at Climate Group RE100.
Next, from the government's energy leadership, supervising the Renewable Energy Management Bureau and the Electric Power Industry Management Bureau. Denise, she combines scientific rigor with policy expertise to drive the Philippines towards a cleaner, more resilient energy future. Let us all please welcome Undersecretary Rowena Guevara of the Department of Energy.
And completing our panel, a leader who has spearheaded the development of one of Southeast Asia's largest renewable energy platforms with nearly 7 gigawatts of attributable renewable capacity across the Asia Pacific. His vision, reaching 20 gigawatts of renewables capacity by 2030, proving that bold leadership can power an entire region's clean energy future. Please welcome on stage Mr. Eric Francia, the President and CEO of ASIN Corporation.
Let's take a look first at the big picture. And let's start off with Hannah. We are witnessing an unprecedented shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy. So tell us, what's driving this clean energy revolution, Hannah?
Well, I think the main thing to consider here is the business case for renewables. It is just makes commercial sense. And we don't even have to start talking about the climate to see why this shift is happening. As you can see here, the good news is that an overwhelming majority of business leaders around the world are ready to do their part in the clean energy shift. And they see access to renewables as a priority for when they decide where to invest, where to put supply chains, where they place their own operations. And all of these things are going to drive really interesting things in energy over the coming years. As we can see, they are even willing to relocate away from Asian markets that maintain their fossil fuel status quo. And I think that's very important to consider, because here there's opportunities for those who decide to lead. I think when we think about Asia specifically, a big driver is also the combination of the fossil fuel-based energy systems together with the huge manufacturing sectors here. And that combination is brutal for the climate, but also for these companies' bottom lines. And they are very motivated to see greater stability in their electricity prices, and renewables can bring that.
And Hannah, do they see long-term potential in Asia?
Absolutely. The renewables potential in Asia is astounding, and Suji already took us through that for the Philippines specifically. When we think about Asia, from my perspective, from my organization, RE100, which, as we heard, brings together over 440 large and really ambitious companies to shift to 100% renewable electricity, we see by far our biggest growth in Asia. We have 32 new members in the last reporting period, and 95% of their energy consumption was in Asia. So what we see is that Asia is really charging ahead here. And I think what's important to see here as well is that our membership is going more ambitious despite the certain global headwinds that we see in the debate, with 27 of our members actually improving their targets and bringing them forward in the last reporting period.
And now let's go over to Yusek Guevara from the Department of Energy. There's a great potential for renewable energy here in the Philippines. And as stated earlier, renewable energy share in the power mix is 35% by 2030 and 50% by 2040. So there's a lot of potential in fashion and in the semiconductor business. How aggressive is the Philippine government in enticing and courting these renewable energy companies into the country?
Very, very much. In fact, among the countries that are emerging markets, the Philippines is number 2 in terms of attractiveness in investing in renewable energy. In fact, that appetite is clearly shown in the recent green energy auctions that we have. Green energy auction is the Department of Energy offering capacities for particular renewable energy technologies, and then the companies bidding, pababaan. And so, our first green energy auction this year for pump storage hydro and geothermal, we offered 4,600 megawatts. The bidders bidded 7,000 megawatts. And we ended up awarding 6,600 megawatts. And then the green energy auction number 4, we offered 10,000 megawatts, and so far we have 9,400 megawatts. The appetite is there. And so we are very much ready for these companies, the RE100 that they talked about, because you talk about semicon. Semicon is the largest export of our country, but I haven't seen them shift towards renewable. But it's promising that many of these companies have net zero targets, and therefore the capacities that we are building and accelerating will actually have off-takers. Now, to the point that you asked, are we accelerating? From 2021 to 23, 3 years, the total new renewable energy was less than 700. And she reported last year it's over 700 megawatts. This year it will be over 1,000 megawatts. So we are definitely accelerating. And if we deliver all of those green energy auction winners, we are going to hit 35% by 2030.
Now we shift over to Eric, one of the leading companies in the Philippines when it comes to renewable energy, which is ACEN. So share with us what was the primary catalyst that basically drove ACEN to make a bold commitment to make its transition away from fossil fuels.
Well, Rico, first of all, we're a young company, and being the energy platform of the Ayala Group, we've always aspired to be a purely renewable and sustainable organization. That was in 2011 when we built up ACEN from a standing start. Unfortunately, back then, while our first investment was into a small renewables wind farm, North Wind, the iconic Bangi Bay wind farm, we quickly realized that what the Philippines needed back then was reliable and affordable energy that could only come at that point in time, 15 years ago, from coal. So we ended up pivoting. The first 5 years, we enabled around 2 gigawatts worth of coal plants, of which we owned around 1.3 gigawatts at our peak in 2015, 2016. We had no choice simply to support the growth of the country back then. But then in 2016, 2017, we felt the structural shift more towards renewables. It was getting more and more competitive. Technology was advancing. Price was getting more competitive. The promise of energy storage to complement the variability of solar and wind was beginning to show some promise. So we decided, while we were still not as big in fossil fuel, to make that bold pivot, that bold shift into renewables. So we started to divest away from coal plants and invest, basically go all in renewables at the time, and not only do it in the Philippines, but also around the region to reach a certain scale. So that's what we did in terms of our transition that we started about 8 years ago.
All right. In the introduction, we mentioned about 7 gigawatts. That's correct. How many gigawatts is available for the Philippine market? Because the 7 gigawatts is for the Asia-Pacific region. Your investments in other countries outside of the Philippines.
Yes. In the Philippines, we have about 2.5 gigawatts, a little over a third of our total portfolio. But of course, longer term, since Yusek Guevara is here, I want to assure her that we are fully committed. Philippines is our largest and core market, and my aspiration really is to get Philippines to a 40 to 50% share of renewables. So that 2.5 gigawatts will grow significantly over the next 5-10 years, in line with our government's targets.
So at this point, for ACEN, is there's so much demand that there's not enough supply?
You can say that. At this point, we're still building. There's a lot of demand for renewables. right? But there's also a lot of demand for electricity and in general. What's happened, Rico, is we're still on catch-up mode in renewables, but thanks to the government policy, we've had successful rounds of GIAP, as Yusek Guevara mentioned. But the rest of the country, arguably because of the strong demand growth in electricity in general, fossil fuel plants are still being built, be it coal or gas. But I think the challenge for us is how do we accelerate renewable energy, and with these strong policies, it can be done. And then in the future, maybe into the early 2030s or late 2030s, how can we start thinking about retiring some of these coal plants? And this is something that ASIN is also pioneering, which we can discuss later on.
All right, let's go back to Suji. From what you heard from Undersecretary Guevara and from Eric Francia, can the Philippines be a leader in decarbonization and renewable energy?
Of course.
That's good news.
Of course. As I've shown the figures, very exciting figures, specifically about Philippine markets, which look quite promising with the full potential of renewable energy. And also, since surprisingly, not a lot of companies in Southeast Asia has a diversified menu of procurement options in place. So Philippines is one of those few countries in Southeast Asia where all these procurement mechanisms are being available in the market for the corporates since 2008. So it's quite a matured market, and that's actually the reason why Philippines is now not included as one of the priority markets of Asia. So basically, we are prioritizing Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, but Singapore more for the regional level topic on the Southeast Asia side. And the reason why Philippines is not being part of these priority markets is because we see quite promising figures around the policy instruments and policy design in the market. So still, there are challenges and there are a lot of things to get done to get to the even higher level of maturity of the market. But with the current speed and with the current design of the policy, which is in a quite supportive to the corporate procurement of renewable energy, I see it to be promising to be a leader in the region if the government can keep up the efforts and also bring more cost effectiveness and also the credibilities around the current policy instruments.
Is there credibility in the policies here in the Philippines, especially with the Renewable Act?
Well, the PPAs are available in the market, and I would like to maybe take this moment to talk a little bit of PPAs, because this is not an instrument that's available across all markets in Southeast Asia. It has been a key driver in Southeast Asia's acceleration of the corporate renewable energy procurement, because we see this mechanism as a win-win-win solution between buyers, developers, and sellers, in a sense that it brings cost effectiveness by allowing buyers to procure renewable energy at a fixed price for a long term. And for developers, it brings a long-term commitment of a demand signal from the buyer side, which improves the bankability of their project development. And also for the government, it basically brings market-based pathways to bring more private sector investment to add more capacity on the national level renewable pipelines. So this creates like a virtuous cycle, not only helping the corporates to decarbonize their supply chains and themselves, but also it brings more added capacity to the renewable energy market at the country level. And these PPAs are being available in this market, Philippines. And the one key challenge that I would like to bring up to the government is that the process is too complicated. I mean, it's a long-term setting between a buyer and seller. It's a very long-term contract with a lot of administrative and contractual processes required. And by having clearer policies around the PPAs, we can have an opportunity to streamline this very complex administrative processes and contractual processes for PPAs, which will attract more companies to join this program.
Yeah, I think, Hannah, the PPAs could be a hurdle, right? How does this compare to the rest of the region?
Yeah, so actually we have some interesting data from our many members, and we have 111 RE100 members who have operations in the Philippines, so it's quite a lot. And we see that they are able, in the latest data, to source 56% of their energy consumption here from renewables. And that is actually remarkably high amongst our members for Southeast Asia. And not only that, but we see that the procurement options that they're using here are the more impactful ones compared as well to other Southeast Asian markets. So I want to compliment the Undersecretary, and your department is doing something that's making that possible for our members. And it's really promising. But of course, we have, of course, more to do, more that we want to see, as in all markets. And I think what needs to start happening in the Philippines is really to start displacing coal in the electricity mix, rather than just meeting new demand with renewables.
Your reaction, ma'am, to what Hannah and Suji just mentioned?
We do have an energy transition plan that includes voluntary early decommissioning or repurposing of coal-fired power plants. For example, the new ones that are being built, these are the ones that are not covered by the coal moratorium. By themselves, they decided that they will co-fire with biomass. So it's not 100% coal, 20% biomass already. So what we're seeing is that the example set by ASEAN for the first energy transition shows the other coal-fired power plants that it is possible. And in fact, we've had several studies done to figure out how to do this mechanism. So our latest policy, it's still in public consultation, is what we call the Department of Energy's carbon policy. This is our way of encouraging the transition of coal-fired power plants by allowing them to use a portion of the transition credit that they will get for retiring a coal-fired power plant to be used for a renewable energy replacement of that old coal-fired power plant. So these are in the works. And of course, we are also going to come up with a policy for the virtual PPAs. This is we're doing public consultations right now, so it takes about maybe 2 months to get it out there.
So Hannah, Suji, things are moving here in the Philippines. The
Yay.
Department of Energy and the government is doing something about it. And for you, Eric, how has the transition been from coal-fired to renewables? And will we eventually see ASEAN going 100% renewable?
We are, in fact, already 100% renewables this year, Rico, in terms of generation that we own and operate, right? However, the transition will take time. It doesn't happen overnight. So we're still reliant when we serve our customers we still purchase from other third parties. Some of these are still from coal plants. We purchase from the market, right, and then manage the risk and serve it to our customers. Now, that's temporary. That's a transition. By 2040, we expect that our renewable fleet will be fully complemented by energy storage. That our thesis is that there would be no need, at least from our vantage point, to rely on third-party procurement and so forth. So we will be truly, purely renewables, even from a procurement standpoint, not only from an investment side. But it will take time. It's a transition period.
And it is known, of course, that the commercial and industrial sector are basically the groups that use coal-fire that produce greenhouse gas emissions. Are we seeing now more Filipino companies transitioning to renewable energy?
Most definitely, Rico. What we're observing is if you're a large industrial customer with, a few megawatts of demand. These are the large ones. The typical factory would be above 1 megawatt, right? Some of them are really even 20 megawatts or 30 megawatts. These big ones, if they don't, it's hard for them to commit to net zero in an advanced mode or RE100 advanced, because then where will they get that base load renewable? So what they do is they just go for the lowest cost. That is not our target market. On the other hand, you have these companies where electricity is not a very significant portion of their input cost. They would say, we want to support renewables for philosophical, sustainability reasons, and so on. They want to do the right thing, and it's actionable. Those are the customers, partners that we have that support it. These are
so
the
it's
schools.
Not just for show. It's not for a marketing gimmick.
No,
that they are into renewables.
No, they have a philosophical stance. There's alignment of values there. Of course, they will use the leverage as opportunity for their marketing and branding, but it's not just that. They would be foolish not to be proud of it, right? But at the core of it, they have a sustainability orientation or imperative in their companies as well. Those are our partners that we love to deal with.
And which particular companies, customers among the top Filipino companies are using now renewable energy? Who are your partners here?
I think the major conglomerates, of course, have made our affiliates, of course, are all using renewables. Bank of the Philippine Islands, Ayala Land, Globe, and so forth. But other conglomerates are also headed towards that path. But even the smaller scale businesses, the small and medium enterprises, and various sectors, we serve a lot of schools, for example. Our alma mater, De La Salle University, is a proud partner of ASEN, for example. Of course, Mapua, who's our affiliate as well, and so forth. So a lot of schools are headed towards that, fast-moving consumer goods, retail as well. One great thing about the policy and the industry structure in the Philippines, as mentioned earlier by Suji, is this is an open and competitive market. This is not like Vietnam or Indonesia, which is still a utility-driven market, a single big one, our old Napocor days. This one is already competitive, but it's not fully competitive yet. It's not yet down at the household level. But the good news is with the recent enactment or implementation of the so-called retail aggregation program, we can now reach the household level, but you need to aggregate them, to group them. In fact, we just signed, it's an exciting one, we signed the first retail aggregation program with a residential community, a condominium somewhere in Makati, and that's exciting, right? So we now have our first residential customers. We signed with Globe Telecom, for example, powering 3,000 of their towers, right? Bank of the Philippine Islands. We signed across 600 or 700 branches, for example. So we can now go down to these. So we're really scaling up renewables, and to your point earlier, it's enabled by the policy and enactment of thereof.
collected in the Philippines alone over 1 billion bottles worth of material. Internationally, over 40,000 collectors and over 5 billion bottles collected. What we're doing is creating a sense of currency so the plastic doesn't flow into the ocean to begin with. We operate a blockchain-based banking application that provides a space for the material we collect to be transacted as a currency. An opportunity for the local population to collect and return the material transacted through a bank account that ultimately provides credit inclusion, financial inclusion, and the ability to borrow against the material that they've collected and returned. Every household now has the opportunity to look at their material differently, hold it, and transact it to improve their own lives.
Let's take a look at the data centers. There's a lot of attention right now on data centers, which, of course, needs a lot of energy. But of course, clean energy in compliance with the ESG, this will definitely help the data centers. I mean, that's the Philippines compared to the rest of the region, where maybe some case studies have the potential to be a data center hub.
Yeah, I think if we look at the renewables potential, again, for the Philippines, absolutely, there is the potential there. When it comes to data centers, I think we're lucky that plenty are RE100 members, because that means that they have the ambition to power their operations with renewables. We could be in a much worse position if none of them wanted to be RE100 members. For the Philippines specifically, I think that is something I'd be interested in hearing from the Undersecretary on, because when it comes to the huge surge in demand that we're going to see from the data centers, it's going to be a challenge for many countries, not just for the Philippines, to meet that, not only in building out capacity, but also grid infrastructure, so that the added capacity actually can be brought online.
So, ma'am, what is the strategy of the Department of Energy here?
We are working closely with the data center industry players to determine exactly what they need, where, and when. But one of the things that excite us is that, we have awarded over 1,400 renewable energy service contracts with a capacity of over 150 gigawatts. Of course, we need offtake for that. Data centers, they operate 24/7, is a good offtake for all of these renewables. And so we are encouraged by the interest of data centers to locate here. And about a few weeks ago, I attended a conference for data centers in the Philippines. I was surprised that there's already 120 megawatts here of data centers. And they're planning to grow by up to 500 megawatts in the next 2 years. So that means that the offtake for this green energy auction winners is also guaranteed. And also for the other 1,300 renewable energy service contract, there is a market for them. And this will stimulate these developers to pursue the project to the end. So to us, this is exciting, especially we're going into AI all over the world. It would be good if we have the power or the energy to power this up.
Yeah, and attract more multinational companies and maybe bring in more of these companies into the country.
Oh, yeah.
What is the potential, Eric, for this high growth sector, data centers?
Oh, huge, Rico. I think Singapore was on the leading edge of this, but they're pretty much full. There has been a moratorium because of the lack of supply. Malaysia is also getting full, so they're now looking at the Philippines, right? Indonesia is, there are certain challenges there. But Philippines, definitely, we have a strong potential here because we have decent, we don't have the best renewable resource, but we have a good enough renewable resource. India, Australia, we're very lucky. Those countries are very lucky to have flat land, really strong resource, irradiance, wind, etc. Here it's okay. It's better than Europe, for example. So I think that could be a competitive advantage for the Philippines. We have a strong ICT infrastructure as well. So huge potential, multi-gigawatts. The challenge, as Hannah mentioned, is the grid connectivity. And by this, I don't only mean the national grid, but also the last mile. So when we speak to data centers, one of the buzz terms that I always hear is we need powered land that has access to a substation. Right? Globe, for example, with their partner STT, built one in, I think it's in Balintawak. That one has a good build-to-suit substation, collaboration with Meralco and so forth. So you need several of those. Those are, scalable to a couple of hundred megawatts, for example. So definitely a lot of work that needs to be done on selecting the right land. It's not as easy. Mind you, when you talk to these hyperscalers, they have a lot of requirements, a lot of boxes to tick. Right, you cannot be in near a fault line or near the ocean or what have you. There has to be good ICT infrastructure, etc. and so on. And then most importantly, it has to be powered land as well. So a lot of work to be done. And then of course, a lot of them are already demanding renewable energy. Now the good news, as Yusek Guevara mentioned, a lot of them are 24/7, and that really requires dispatchable, reliable renewables. You cannot just have pure solar or pure wind at night where we're going to get the power. So the opportunity here is that battery storage is coming down in terms of price and increasing in terms of efficiency. And I think it's an opportune time really for us to scale up and enable all of this great opportunity.
And as Eric mentioned, Suji, there's still a lot of potential for the Philippines, but of course, we may have some challenges going forward. What can we learn? I mean, he mentioned about Malaysia, Singapore, already maybe reaching their limits. What lessons can be learned from the likes of Malaysia, which we can adopt here in the Philippines?
Of course, I see myself repeating a couple of words here, as my goal here is to make sure that everybody is walking out of this room with these words being lingering on your head throughout your rest of your life. Cost effectiveness, CPPA, Corporate Power Purchase Agreement, being the strongest policy instrument, procurement mechanisms including for these hyperscale data centers. So the reason I'm bringing up these two keywords is because reflecting the recent story in Malaysia, basically they have this direct power purchase agreement model called the CRES. And some critics about this model was that the system access charges for companies are too high. So this was one of the main area that we advocate for our corporate members over the course of past few months. And thankfully, the government reacted to our advocacy efforts by cutting down the price by 20% for this firm model. What I refer as firm model is the solar plus battery solution, and 11% for non-firm model, which is just the solar. So basically, this price cut down in the system access charges brought a lot more opportunities for companies to join because they can now join the program with a cheaper price. So making the corporate PPAs to be cost effective and also with the sufficient supply for the hyperscale data centers to procure renewable energy at scale will put more promising pathways for Philippines to facilitate the market.
And Yusek, is basically the Philippines moving at its own pace, or is it modeling its renewable energy strategy on another country?
We are moving at our own pace. The way that we decided on these targets, 35 is a very nice number, simply because when the law was made, we were at 35% renewable. That's why we're targeting it by 2030. And then, of course, we have to fulfill our nationally determined contributions. And in order to do that, this is the scale that we need to deliver.
And Eric, from what you've seen so far, being in close proximity and, of course, working with one of the top renewable energy companies in the Philippines, what more needs to be done in terms of policies, in terms of regulation, in further boosting the local renewable sector?
There's still a lot to be done. I'll mention a critical few. I think number one, as I mentioned earlier, we're not yet down at the household level. You still need to aggregate them, and it's hard to aggregate. I think it would be great if we can really accelerate the 100% open and competitive market so that we can reach the household level. And that will result in savings also. Suji mentioned cost effectiveness. I would say not only on the corporate side, but equally, if not more importantly, at the household level. If you buy from renewable energy, you don't pay the 12% VAT. And that is a big help for the households, right? That's a significant component. So if we can get renewable energy, the so-called GEOP program, Green Energy Option Program, at the household level without the friction cost of having to aggregate them, make it open for all, I think that will be a great start. It will enable not only, it's a win-win-win, to borrow Suji's, the household wins, the renewable energy developer wins, and the government wins because we will be attaining the target more effectively. Number two, of course, there is the grid infrastructure, right? I mean, you know, this is a massive task, and you know, it's a momentous task for the grid operator here, NGCP. You know, it's a thankless job. It's hard to acquire right-of-way, which is an issue not only in the Philippines but everywhere where we operate. In fact, everywhere in the world, I would say. So, you know, if there is a way to supplement or complement without encroaching, so to speak, into the franchise, there are ways. I think we have to crack the nut on this one. No, because one company alone, if we just rely on that, we may not get there. And don't forget the last mile, which is beyond the national grid already. Right? Again, when we talk about the data centers, expansions of other real estate developments and so forth, the last mile, you know, strengthening our cooperatives as well to invest more in infrastructure. There's also an opportunity, it was mentioned earlier, number three, and maybe I'll stop here, to enable more distributed generation, the so-called behind the meter in your households, especially now that solar is so cheap and battery is so cheap. You know, this will lessen the need for grid infrastructure investments as well. If you can build your mini generation inside your household or industrial commercial complex. And again, I'm very well aware that the DOE has a bunch of circulars in the pipeline to enable all this.
And you know, Yusek, this grid issue always crops up. Are we likely to have more grids, more companies setting up this infrastructure to be able to absorb the capacity?
We have to think about two things. We have on-grid, which is National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, and we have off-grid, which is National Power Corporation, National Transmission Corporation. So for the on-grid, what we have seen for the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, or NGCP, is an acceleration of work. For example, last year, 2024, was the first year that all the islands were finally connected with the Mindanao-Visayas interconnection project completed. And then that was followed by the Hermosa San Jose, which unlocked the grid for Luzon, coming from the north going to the south. And then there's also the Cebu Negros Panay project that was completed. All of these were done last year. And that is the reason why this summer, even though we were expecting some things to happen, we did not have any incidents during summer, because the grid is already ready. Having said that, of course, because of the rapid development of renewables, we are always working with the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines in getting right-of-way, in getting the LGU to help them, and so on and so forth. Now, talking about the off-grid areas, we have seen that if you give the off-grid areas the right backbone, transmission, the growth is fantastic. So the government is investing there through the Maharlika Investment Corporation. So our first target is the Mindoro Island, because the growth there is very, very fast, but they don't have a looped grid. And so that is the work that is getting, well, we are in negotiations with MIC such that they will fund that, such that if you have a stable backbone in that island, it will grow even faster. There's pent-up demand, and then there's the opportunity for more tourism for those islands. And we're planning to do this island by island, but it will take time.
How much time?
We're hoping that in the next 5 years, the investments for this particular kinds of projects, because we just need one example to succeed. And if we're able to get Mindoro done, I think the others are going to follow. And maybe we don't have to connect all of our islands to the main grid and just have energy security per grid. And following what Eric said, you know, distributed generation is a natural scheme for an archipelagic country like ours.
Yeah, it's very challenging because we have 7,641 islands. So much power to distribute. So, Suji, from what you heard from Eric and Yusek Guevara, there's a lot of hope in the Philippines despite the challenges and the hurdles.
Of course. I mean, Eric basically answered all the points I wanted to address in terms of the opportunities and challenges, specifically around the grid infrastructure as well. Well, the microgrids can be part of the solution for the distribution of the energy. And also, that's specifically tied to the grid issue. And one of the challenges I also addressed about the regulatory complexity, particularly sometimes about the long contractual processes for the PPAs. So if it can be really supported and helped by the government, and also by aligned agreement between buyers and sellers to streamline all these processes, I think it can much accelerate the participation into this mechanism.
So, Anna, do you think that the government should encourage more companies to get into renewable energy, invest in renewable energy?
Absolutely, and I think here we have more win-win situations, because the fact that corporates are ready to invest in the energy transition would hopefully take pressure off public budgets to reach your renewables targets. On the other hand, it's fantastic for companies if there are ambitious renewables targets, net zero targets as a de-risking measure and reducing capital costs. So there is a give and take there between corporates and government. And I think it sounds like it's really promising, and like RE100 is ready for its first Filipino headquartered member to join. So let me know if our first potential member is in this audience.
And maybe you can cite to us maybe an example of what is the cost effectiveness of a company getting into transitioning into renewable energy.
Absolutely. Especially in the last 5 years, the price volatility of fossil fuels has really been tough for a lot of corporates. And the ones who signed power purchase agreements 5 years ago and locked in a good price for renewables for 10, 15, 20 years, they are thriving right now compared to their competitors who decided to not follow suit. And I think this volatility of the fossil fuel markets is really making the case for us. But I think there's also some myth-busting left to do in a lot of Asian markets, and corporates who are not charging ahead because of misconceptions. And here I think really the government and also initiatives like RE100 and ASEC and corporates who are leading the charge have a big responsibility as well to make sure that we don't let corporates lose out on this opportunity because of misconceptions.
Looking ahead, Suji, what specific trends, success factors, or unique opportunities are you observing across different Asian markets?
ASEC was launched 2.5 years ago, where we started from the awareness building exercises with different governments. So basically, some governments was not even aware of the importance of this diversification of many of different procurement options. They kind of sometimes asked me a naive question of like, why cannot be just one? But now we've past that phase, thanks to a lot of efforts made by our partners like RE100 and also our corporate members as well. So now governments are all different governments in the region are very well aware of the importance of facilitating corporate renewable energy procurement and leading the uptake. And this is the really promising trend. So now we are trying to move into more technical phase where we can actually provide some sort of specific solutions by mobilizing the different lessons learned across different countries. So we're really trying to leverage our cross-country learning exercise across the different countries in the region.
All right, what about you, Hannah? What does the future look like for renewable energy in terms of technological innovations?
I mean, I think the storage question is the most exciting thing that's coming up at the moment, and especially in the context of the data centers we've been discussing. So I would say the rollout of storage is really promising. And in terms of technological innovation, I think we have already seen how the sort of the virtuous cycle of the bringing down of price for renewables technologies has made it the cheapest form of electricity in history, and we need to continue seeing this push, basically improving what renewables can do for us at an ever lower price.
And Yusek Guevara, are we likely to see over the next 5 years new policies that will encourage more renewable energy investments in the Philippines?
Eric was talking about getting it to the household level. This is retail competition and open access. We do have a roadmap, and the ERC is going to come up with that roadmap by next year. And that is a 5-year roadmap, meaning to say 5 years from now, we will have a green energy option at the household level. And as Eric promised, that's going to bring more investments in renewables into the country.
And Eric, one critical aspect, of course, for renewable energy, that's why we're continuing to invest in this industry, is that we want no Filipino left behind.
Absolutely, Rico. Even as we transition from coal to clean energy, we want to make sure that the coal plant workers, for example, are well taken care of, as well as their communities. So, as I mentioned earlier, we are embarking on a pioneering coal to clean, the so-called just energy transition. So I think amidst all this, we need to make sure that we take care of the communities as well. The transition has to be responsible, it has to be inclusive, it has to be sustainable.
And before we end, a final word from our panelists, a call to action, why we should have that energy transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy and clean energy. Suji.
Because it's not just about climate, but it's about people and planet. Yeah. It's a future of our future generation. I'm a mother of a little child living in Hanoi. Actually, the worst air pollution is there. So I've seen the need of this move to the clean energy on day-to-day basis, not just for the climate itself, but really the future of my child.
The future is here. All right, Hannah.
I will move on to a call of action to governments then, to put in place enabling policies to encourage more development and to